Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a final presentation of the shared services plan that was submitted by the county executive with the participation of all the municipalities within the county last month. All across the county in October, there are municipalities that are either in the process or have just completed presenting budgets to their citizenry. And I know from experience, having previously been at the City of Albany and now at the county working on budgets, that it's a continual struggle of looking for ways to minimize the impact of the delivery of services on taxpayers while at the same time trying to do more with less. You want to always enhance the quality of your services, but unfortunately sometimes just dealing with the fact that there are expenses that go up, many times largely beyond your control. There are revenue sources that also go down largely as a result of factors that may be beyond your control. You look for ways to achieve efficiencies, to do things in a smarter way, and to hopefully, at the end of the day, deliver services that are of a quality that your constituency deserves. In Albany County, the municipalities within our county share with us the same taxpayer base. And so it was the governor's wisdom and the state legislature approved the concept that maybe we could work collectively and cooperatively to try to put our brain power together and reach out to citizenry and reach out to unions and reach out to school districts and a whole variety of folks who should have an input on how budgets are put together and how services are delivered, to see if we could come up with new and perhaps innovative ways to deliver services acting collectively. And that's the whole concept behind a shared services plan. We were very fortunate in this process to have the involvement of all the municipal leaders within the county, many of the school districts, the participation of so many different constituencies like unions and union leaders, and the leadership and the guidance of Rockefeller Institute, and in particular, Dr. Malatras, who's going to be giving the presentation today. The county executive is very proud of the work product that we've delivered. When fully implemented, this plan has the potential to save over $9 million collectively for all of the localities within the county. So it is a very important document, and I think one that's been carefully and thoughtfully put together, and we look forward in the months and years to come to continue to work on this document. It's really a working document. It offers a number of suggestions and ideas that require us to continue working collectively to achieve the goals that it sets forth. So I want to personally, on behalf of the county executive, thank again Jim and the Rockefeller Institute for their very hard work and all the municipal leaders who took part in the effort. Jim?
Good afternoon. A little loud, though. Just make sure you have me. Thanks to the county executive and Phil in particular and his team for dealing with us for these many months on this process. I see many of you are here again, which is nice. But we're going to go through quickly through the plan, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or even since there's not many folks here, if you have a question in the middle of the presentation, I'll take that too, so I'm just not drowning you out with just repetitive talk. But as Phil said, this was a pretty involved process. We had several public hearings, 3, and we also had individual calls with every municipality and had a lot of follow-up and got some really decent ideas. And one of the good things that came out of this wasn't just the ideas, I think, in the plan, but some of the issues going back and forth with barriers from local governments to accomplish some of these things with the state, which I could talk about at the end too. So very quickly to go through, this was the directive of the county executive that he wanted this to be a bottom-up approach. He wanted to build consensus and get lots of ideas, which we thought was important too. He didn't want us to tell you what we thought. We really wanted to reach out to the communities, to the municipalities, and see what they had to say. The other piece was he wanted to focus on overhead and not on people. That was a key piece of this, where we could find reductions in costs, but government efficiencies. We wanted to focus on back office and other like functions as opposed to personnel. Phil alluded to this as sort of a look at the final savings. The plan includes $9.7 million of savings when fully implemented by year 3. And we started off with about a max of $6 million, and through more work in adding some other new pieces from municipalities, we ended up at about $10 million, $9.7 million. But that's not just the only story, right? That's on top of about $15 million in savings that the county and local governments have accomplished over the past 5 years or so. So this is a continuation of that effort. Just look on the ceiling. Just keep looking there.
Keep moving all over.
This is a sort of weird way of looking at a PowerPoint. So it wasn't just $9.7 million. It was a lot of effort that went into it beforehand, which has helped this process considerably. And now I just want to go through what the final proposals were, and then answer your questions. We had 8 proposals total that were approved by the panel that was led by the county executive, and the first one was on creating a community choice aggregation program. Really, what this is to allow municipalities to join together collectively to purchase energy, electricity, heating, and other things. This has been this was just allowed for by the Public Service Commission in the state a couple of years ago, and 1 or 2 counties have already signed up and did this program. Westchester County being one of them, and they found at least 20% in savings, not only to the local governments themselves, but also to residents. This is a double benefit. This helps local governments, but it also directly helps residents, where that's not a tax savings that you can pass on, but it's a good benefit. This we analyzed, and we think this is on the conservative side. We were very careful with our plan as opposed to some of the municipalities, frankly. To be on the conservative side, we think we'll exceed this. We think the fully phased-in savings will be about $1.5 million, potentially more. And that's using a roughly 10% cost-saving estimate as opposed to a 20%. We were being conservative. Here are the participating municipalities that agreed to begin entering into these. The county is going to run this process, and there will be help from state and other partners. But this now just starts the process, and we think when this is going, that more municipalities, frankly, will sign up. The second one, which was one of the things that virtually every municipality and school district, I forgot to mention, school districts were invited to participate on the panel. It was not required by law, but they could as an option. The county executive thought it was important to include school districts as part of this process, since they are a large portion of cost in government. Plus, it's good to have good partnerships among all of the representative municipalities and entities. The creation of a countywide health consortium. This was modeled. There's several different models. There's a model that Tompkins County is agreeing to do. There are some regulatory issues that have to be worked through, particularly through the Department of Financial Services, on the size of the municipality that can enter. We think there is some wiggle room moving in a positive way there. Fully phased in, we think there could be $3 million in savings, and that we know is a very conservative estimate. We actually think it's closer to $5 to $6 million in savings when fully phased in. We think you can get up in about 2 years, but you probably have to build in some more lead time of about 3, maybe 4 years. Every municipality agreed to this proposal and to opting into doing this proposal, except for those listed there, Village of Ravenna, and some of the school districts, particularly because the school districts are already in their own. The third one, which was the creation of a countywide centralized shared specialty equipment program, where the county basically will keep a running database of available equipment for municipalities to share. This actually had a lot of interest from folks, including school districts that don't often participate in shared equipment. Municipalities we found already in Albany County were sharing amongst each other, largely related to if they're geographically located to each other. This broadens this. We think to start, and this again was, if you look at our end notes, how we figured this out, we literally took a percentage cost of what it would cost to purchase the equipment, and overall we think fully phased in it could save at least $500,000, and we think more. Even more important on this one, this is just better management and efficiency of services. I used to say this and people thought I was being silly, but the school districts who are participating often complained about having to rent equipment, cherry pickers being one of them. It costs $10,000 that could go towards books or equipment or a coach for football or soccer or softball. They were renting it in order because they have to change all the light bulbs in their gymnasiums. Well, they didn't realize they could share equipment. Now they'll have the ability to share that type of equipment with each other. And already, if you look in our report, it's illustrative, not dispositive, but it does show equipment that's available and equipment that folks need, and we crosswalk those pieces. The fourth piece was shared personnel, similar idea to equipment, to a centralized process. Here are the participating municipalities to start with. We think more will join. This is largely focused on specialty areas, land use attorneys or engineers, specialty engineers, where some municipalities don't need those folks on payroll, nor do they need to afford a contract that could get very expensive as a one-off. But if the county manages a centralized thing, and this is not the county owning all of the personnel or running or having them on payroll, nor is this them sort of dictating what has to happen, but they'll present options. So maybe a town has a very good attorney that they'll be willing to share with other folks in villages and cities and school districts. The county's the facilitator of those services being shared, the personnel being shared. Again, a very conservative phased-in estimate of $1.3 million. We think it will be more. Many specialty contracts that get put out for RFP often come back much higher on some of these specialty services, especially engineering and other types of things. Animal control is another area that there was some real interest in sharing services. Lawyers generally, there's lawyers in the room, but people don't like to have as many lawyers as possible on payroll. They like to share those services. The fifth piece was on joint purchasing. We got a lot of feedback on this piece, actually, and everybody except for the Village of Urbana opted into this. They'll opt into this program. In many cases, if this is happening on some level, people are piggybacking off the state contracts. There were some concerns raised by some of the state contract options where they thought the county was doing a better job, or in some cases, some of the municipalities have already banded together in doing some of these joint processes, joint purchasing, especially in IT and other types of equipment. That will fully phased in, we think, save about $600,000 for joint purchasing. One municipality on the fuel side alone, they said they could find $50,000 in savings just like this. So this is a worthwhile thing, which is totally on a back office function, and it's just savings. The other proposal was to do a joint consolidated maintenance and vehicle repair program with the county, which had a couple of folks, municipalities or school districts that wanted to opt into this. Some of this is a longer term process, quite frankly. Some of this might require local laws to be passed and referendum so this is a longer term thing. We think fully phased in, there could be $600,000 of savings to start. But this proposal on some level, depending on, it could get bigger or smaller, and there's a lot of mechanics involved in this. So this report is, in this proposal that was voted on a couple of weeks ago, it's just the start of this process, not the end of the process. This one wasn't a major one, but it was considered low-hanging fruit and to do. There's a lot of requirements now from federal and state law to offer a lot more in translational services in different languages. Many municipalities don't actually have the capacity to do this. Again, the county will manage a process, not offer the services themselves. In fact, some of the times the federal government, through law enforcement, offers free services, but we'll put together a joint way of sharing translation services. We think it saves about $50,000 to start, but we actually think this is going to grow considerably as needs change and laws change to require more translational services into more languages, quite frankly. There's a pretty robust list now, and it's only growing. The final one was the retrofitting lights, street lights, and other lights to high-efficiency LED lighting. This had a lot of support from the municipalities, the communities. The issue is a lot of this is already happening, so we couldn't count a lot of the savings as new savings, unfortunately. We found about $250,000 in new savings as of this report. There are a lot of problems here which the county is going to help manage, which is working with the utility companies. Many municipalities found that to be extremely and extraordinarily difficult, whether to rent or purchase the poles, working out the right contractual arrangements and agreements. A lot of those things didn't work well, and so people got frustrated. We think if it's a more centralized process where the utility companies know that they have to deal always with all the municipalities in the county as opposed to one-offs, it will change that behavior. And then some other things that were raised in our meetings, we've had several meetings on energy efficiency for municipalities over the course of the summer, was this is a different maintenance schedule as well as folks that are sort of certified to do LED lighting and installations and repair. So some joint sharing of maintenance personnel on LED lighting, so folks aren't just hiring the same people to do some of these things. There's been millions of dollars in savings already. Many municipalities are moving there. We think this is going to grow too as new projects come online, and the county will have to keep up with that because remember, in year one, you get a match from the state of 50% of whatever savings you have. So that will help get the county back and the localities and municipalities back some of their savings. In total, this is how it sort of breaks out a final scorecard. Sorry, it's a little small. In year one, you map out there's about $1.5 million in savings. That is subject to the 50% state match. So you'll get half of that from the state in addition to the 1.5 million, potentially more depending on what the local governments do or don't do. So if the LED lighting gets picked up, for instance, you'll get more money there. We think in year two, it's $6.7 million, and then fully phased in, like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, it's about 9.7, so close to $10 million fully phased in. We think it could be closer to 15 if more people join on, but to be safe, that's where we are. We held the vote September 13th or 14th, I lose track of time. It was a 20-0 vote, so it was a unanimous vote. There were several absences, largely the school districts because they are in class. They just started school at the beginning of September, but it was a unanimous vote, which was an important message to send. Quickly, this was the process that we had to do. It was a relatively quick process. The law was passed in the beginning of April. We were brought on. Pre-planning was done in April through the Department of State, so the actual counties had to wait for the state to get their regulations and things up into place. That happened in about May. In the middle of May, we came on and immediately began working with the municipalities. We touched every municipality in the county. We had several meetings, et cetera. We submitted a draft plan August 1st to the county legislature, who submitted some comments back to us that we put in the final report. We had 3 public hearings on the matter, one in Colony, one here, and one in Bethlehem. Get the review. Yes, sir.
In the draft plan, Jim, there was a proposal to consolidate 911 dispatch, the city of Albany and the county of Albany. Do you know why that dropped out in the final proposal?
There were a bunch. We had, I think, 15 or 20 proposals. Some of them, we just ran out of time, frankly, to finalize enough for people to take an affirmative vote on. So some of these ideas weren't necessarily bad. It wasn't soup enough, and you have to attest to the fact that you were going to do this. So I think in many of those issues, you could still work those out. And I think that's perfectly appropriate. I think the one good thing that came out of this process is now there's a process to implement many things and add many more things, and I think the county executive was open to doing those things. Some,
It can't be just a cost shift.
it just can't be a cost, right,
You have to show savings, and we weren't there.
right.
Sure. I know for the city of Albany, that's an important proposal, to save money on the local end.
So that got to the second point. Some of these actually didn't have the support of the panel, frankly, because those issues weren't worked out yet, right? They were concerned that, okay, you just saved one municipality $1 million, but it cost everybody else $100,000 in order to save that money. That's really a shift, because if we're counting county taxpayers as the same person, which they all are living in a municipality, you're paying out of a different pocket. So they want to better figure out what the offsets were. I think people will get there in a lot of these. Some of these issues didn't have the support of the panel, just generally, so they just came off. And others we're still trying to figure out, but there were potential legal barriers that we weren't able to solve. The debt consolidation was one that I was very interested in, because it's free money, basically, if you lower your interest rate by consolidating debt. There are some legal impediments to that have to be worked through. But again, if those can be figured out, I think the county is more than willing to do it. It's just for the purposes of adopting a plan that didn't
As
happen.
I was trying to allude to in my comments, this is the first step, right, in this collective effort to try to work together to achieve these savings. And I think the more successes we'll see, and the more we work collectively together, I think more ideas will come up, and we'll find ideas like that.
And to Phil's point, because this is just the process, and I'll talk about the local opt-out. What also came out of the process, which was great, this wasn't county will do everything and people are just getting rid of their levels of government. What came out of this was municipalities do certain things well and have certain tools that they could offer to other folks. Many of our towns do a lot of highway maintenance, repair, and management that far exceeds the capacity of some other governments. So they're going to offer that expertise, right? Legal services is something maybe the county could do. So it's multi-level. It's not top-down. It's horizontal and vertical.
Well, just Jim's example, for example, of whether it makes sense for a municipality to own their own, like, streetlights, right? I know at the city of Albany, when I was there, we did a study of that. We hired an engineering firm. We spent a lot of money. The baseline report is a good report that could be used by other municipalities, so they don't have to duplicate that effort.
Right. Final, this is just the process. Folks could have opted out of the plan, which some municipalities do, opt out of certain portions of the plan, proposals. It was an up or down vote. Like I said, it was unanimous, but within the plan itself, people could opt out of saying, we want to do this for whatever reason. In many cases, they were already doing the service, or they didn't believe in the proposal because they didn't think it would work for the communities. They had to notify us if they didn't want to. That's included in the final plan, so you can see that. So that was that, and there you are. So that's the plan in a nutshell. I think Phil's right. It's the beginning of the process. There's an implementation phase now that has to happen. I think the county will organize that soon. But any questions?
Yes, actually, January 1st, or well, actually November 7th, if the government changes in our local town, we can opt back out, correct? We're not bound to this now?
Well, this goes back, this is part of a larger conversation. This law can't compel a local government to do anything it does not want to do. This is not a binding, this is not a contract. Really what this is an attestation to say we are going to work together to try to accomplish these things. In order to get certain matches from the state, you do actually have to carry it out. But things change in local communities, things change generally. If something...
As I mentioned, it's a working document.
Yeah.
It's going to continue to evolve and develop. As Jim mentioned, a lot of these proposals are going to require either a change in state law that may or may not happen. They're going to require local laws that are going to happen or not happen. And they're going to, in some cases, require voter approval.
A good example is Bern. Now, if government...
So you are from where? You are from where?
Sorry?
You are from where? No, I'm kidding.
Let's see, this is number 4. If government changes and our new supervisor changes and gets, answers question, or everything comes back to him and he opts out of the plan, then we can go back in and we can change it, correct?
Right. I think you're also going to see, just take aside the Bern thing, because like where everybody goes, take the community choice aggregation program. in order for that program to work, every municipality that's agreed to it has to pass a local law saying they're going to do it. Some of those municipalities may actually not end up passing a local law, right? Because that was the chief executive who said, yes, we're going to do it. But if the town board says, well, we're not really interested in that, it doesn't happen. Whereas another municipality who wasn't interested in it, their town board may say, well, we're interested in it, so they're going to pass a local law. So as Phil said, this is a living document. I think you're going to see a lot more give and take in this, because some of this is just going to make sense. Once the county gets a shared equipment program up and running, those municipalities say, that doesn't sound great to me. They're going to say, well, why not, right? And they're probably going to sign up. So these things are going to be moving. But what this document does promise is that the implementation process will begin now. I know I wowed you. It was so overwhelming that you have no questions.
What's the next step in this process? It's already been submitted. Application said it is starting. Is that the next step in the process?
Yes. And Jim isn't off the hook yet. We're going to be hopefully working with the Rockefeller Institute to begin implementing the different proposals that Jim just went through, so that we have a manager working with the county that will be able to reach out to localities so we could bring a number of these proposals to fruition. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This motion.